Hello, folks. Let's do this. Let's dive into it. Hope you're all doing well out there. Hope you're able to be safe in this world as we see Israel continue their genocide against the Palestinian people, attacking now Rafah specifically, the area they told millions of refugees to flee to, and now Israel is attacking the areas that people have fled to, which is what you do when you're committing a by the books genocide. But people are standing up and fighting back in so many places in the world. I want to start out by showing some of those clips for you. Here is, damn it, where is it? There are people fighting back in, this is in front of the White House. We have hundreds, maybe thousands of people fighting back, protesting outside the White House just the other day. I believe this was yesterday. Then I also have, watch that for a second. I also have footage of, let's see, this is, I think, this Seattle, or this one is, no, this is Los Angeles. This is Los Angeles. Thousands of people there protesting against Israel's special genocide operation, Israel's special and fun time genocide operation that they're involved in. And then I also have footage of, let's see, I believe I have, did I show you this one? I believe this is Seattle. Yeah, this is Seattle last night. Protesting as well. And of course, you don't get this coverage, you don't get this footage from the mainstream media. They're not generally covering these protests. They're not generally talking about it. I think they do their best, honestly, to just ignore what's going on in Gaza right now. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't any segments that are on the mainstream media, but compared to, say, Trump coverage, it is nothing. It is a blip. One of the largest genocides we've seen in my lifetime. And it is a blip on the radar for your mainstream media compared to Donald Trump coverage. Endless Donald Trump coverage. That is all they focus on. Your liberal media, and then of course your Fox News are just promoting Donald Trump. I guess that's their main activity. But meanwhile, you also have protesters in Israel who are trying their best to block aid from getting into Gaza. I am not kidding. This long line of cars is people who are driving to the border with Gaza in order to try and help stop humanitarian aid from getting in to Gaza, from getting to children and women and men who are completely innocent in this thing. And all of these Israelis have driven out to try and help stop aid from getting to Gaza. That is how dehumanized the people of Israel have become themselves. Yes, they're dehumanizing those in Gaza because they don't seem to have any value or view any value in their lives, but they're also dehumanizing themselves by becoming this soulless thing that they are becoming in order to support this genocide. It really is breathtakingly repulsive. And I'm going to play a clip of a Holocaust survivor saying that and much more. He really says some brilliant things. I'm going to be playing that in a few minutes. But as long as we're on the topic of protest, by the way, everyone, click thumbs up, click share. These videos do keep growing despite the suppression, despite the censorship that I'm up against as America's most censored comedian, commentator, whatever I am now. Also, you know, I this is not the reason I'm censored, but I'm also a anti-Zionist Jew and whatever else you need me to be. I'm just here for you. I'm just here for whatever you want to get out of me. But thank you guys. These videos are growing, and I truly appreciate your help in making that happen. I also will be addressing any super chats that you guys post, you know, over like $3. I'll address them as long as they don't have you know, too many racial epithets in there. I'll address it. But I hope not many of you were planning on doing that, and now you're like, oh, good idea. Anyway, I want to show you another protest. This is in is it Norway, I believe, and this is in Amsterdam, and they took over the sound system of the metro, the train station. Well, this looks more like a train station than the metro, but they took over the actual sound system, it appears, or somehow were able to project their voices equivalent to the sound system in the place. I'm not sure which, but anyway, you'll see the translation. I'll try and read it out as it goes, but they're also dropping leaflets at the same time about the genocide that's being perpetrated.
Beste reizigers.
And you'll notice they also keep it all in the same guise as if it were a train station announcement. It's all said in a very polite voice. It has the little chime, bing, bing, bing.
Helaas moeten wij u meedelen dat u betrokken
We're sorry to inform you that you are involved in genocide.
De Nederlandse regering gebruikt uw stem en uw belastinggeld om Israël
to give political, financial, and military support to Israel in its campaign to destroy Gaza and its people.
Zo weigert Nederland om te vragen om een wapenstilstand.
The Netherlands has refused.
Daarnaast doet uw regering er alles aan om Israël in de VN te beschermen tegen
Israel from
sancties.
sanctions at the United Nations.
Ook in de Tweede
And
Kamer
also, the
staat
Dutch
men aan de
parliament
kant van
is choosing to defend genocide. The majority of the parliament voted to ignore the decision by the International Court of Justice in the case of South Africa against Israel for genocide. The Netherlands also supplies Israel with spare parts for the F-35 bombers that are used to bomb Gaza and its civilians. The Dutch prime minister said behind closed doors.
Wat kunnen we zeggen zodat het lijkt alsof Israël geen oorlogsmisdaden begaat?
That's what he said behind closed doors.
Tijd om de waarheid onder ogen te zien. Nederland staat weer aan de verkeerde kant van de geschiedenis. Het wordt tijd om je uit te spreken. Toon lef. Laat Gaza niet in de steek.
And so that is all. For those of you listening to the podcast who aren't seeing this, it is in a train station, and they have mimicked the sound of a train station announcement, and it is wonderful. I love creative protest. I'm all about creative protest. It is everything that we should be doing. You should be coming up with new and interesting ways to engage people, to get them thinking, to get them angry at this genocide. But, so many other important issues, but, maybe none's as important in this moment as the genocide is being committed. Thank you so much, Alex, to get the super chats rolling. Yard Rock wouldn't fund a genocide, nice, nor would it grand bargain away the social safety net. No drones either. Thanks for your coverage. Appreciate it, Alex. Yes, he's talking about the Yard Rock that I'm the campaign manager for. It's running for president. Yardrock2024.com, real website. You can go check it out. And that Yard Rock, by the way, has already erased $80,000 of medical debt across America. I'm not kidding. That's a real number. Erased $80,000 of medical debt across America. So Yard Rock running for president. And honestly, you've seen the videos of Joe Biden, right? Do you really think a literal rock? I don't mean The Rock. I don't mean Dwayne Johnson. I mean a literal rock sitting on the president's desk, sitting on the desk in the Oval Office. Do you think that would make worse decisions than Joe Biden is right now? Do you think that rock would be less useful to the American people and the world in terms of a pursuit of equality, of justice, of love? Do you think that rock would be worse than Joe Biden is right now? I beg you to consider the fact that it would not. It would not, good sir, be worse. It would actually be better. And of course, here's the interesting thing. It would also be far better than Joe Biden when he was at his most with it. That's the other thing we have to acknowledge as we look at these videos. And actually, I'm going to get to another one of Joe Biden as he greatly deteriorates into whatever he is becoming, into I would say a shell of a human being, but it's really a fleshy skin suit of a human being. As he deteriorates into that, we also should consider the fact that he would be a horrible effing president at his best when he was most with it. I mean, if you see his speeches back 20, 30 years ago when he was a mere 86 years old. No, I'm kidding. He wasn't. But 30 years ago, it was horrific in just different ways. Anyway, while all this going on, the U.S. Senate, while we're seeing straight up genocide, over 28,000 people killed, 70% of them women and children, as we're seeing that, as we're seeing Israel target journalists, killing more journalists than the entire Vietnam War, killing more journalists than the entirety of World War II, as we're seeing them target medics, target hospitals, murder people, torture people, the U.S. is doing its damnedest to send more quote unquote aid. That's one of those euphemisms we love to use. The aid that we send, as you know, I mean, could you imagine if it was just you and one other person, and that person was dropping a bomb on children? Would you sit there and go, nice aid, Carl? Thanks for delivering aid to that child. Anyway, the U.S. is trying to force through the U.S. Congress and the Biden administration, trying to force through a $95 billion quote unquote aid package for Ukraine and Israel and Taiwan, because we've got to create wars with other countries, especially China, as we have a proxy war going with Russia in Ukraine, as we're genociding the Palestinian people, because this is a U.S.-backed genocide. This is the U.S. fully and just as fully as possible is involved in this genocide. I mean, these are U.S. bombs falling on these people. These are the U.S. the Marine. There are Marine leaders commanders in Israel helping Israel perpetrate this genocide. There, according to the New York Times, the CIA is helping Israel assassinate Palestinians. The CIA is helping them figure out who to shoot from the hills. According to The Intercept, the Pentagon has put soldiers on standby. U.S. soldiers on standby to help Israel invade Gaza. So this is a U.S.-backed genocide, 100%. And while all that's going on, you have this $95 billion aid package. This is from Reuters. The Democratic-led U.S. Senate on Tuesday passed a long-sought $95 billion military aid package for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, although it faced an uncertain path ahead of the Republican-controlled House of Representatives. Can I ask you, what kind of insane world we live in that it is now a small group of ridiculously right-wing Republicans who are the only ones trying to stop more bombs going to these conflicts? How is that a thing? How did this world turn on its head so much that the only people in our Congress trying to stop bombs from killing children — that's not why they're doing it, their motivations are disgusting and psychopathic — but stop bombs from killing children is a small group of far right-wing Republicans? I mean, just utter insanity. It also shows how ridiculously corporate America, capitalism, has bought off our Congress, so that you don't just have a two-party system in Congress, which would be ridiculous enough. You have a one-party system in Congress because they all endorse the capitalist destruction of the world, and the mostly endorse endless war. And the motivations for these right-wing Republicans is not because they care about children. I mean, the House voted 412 to 1 to say that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, which it is not, at all. I'm Jewish and anti-Zionist, and there are millions of anti-Zionist Jews in the world. But anyway, point is one-party system that rules our Congress. But on top of that, not only is it a one-party system, but they've even managed the ruling elite, the capitalist, corporatist ruling elite of this government, of this country, have made it so that even in that one-party system in Congress, you don't even have the slightly farther left people of that one wing, of that one party in Congress. The slightly more left people have all been drummed out for the most part from Congress. Dennis Kucinich isn't there anymore. Cynthia McKinney's been kicked out. Alan Grayson's been booted. And of course I don't know what Bernie Sanders is now, but when he was running in 2016, they managed to rig the primaries against him. I'm apparently talking so loud I'm knocking my mic off the table, which I think shows something about the energy I give to you folks, about the energy I provide. Okay, so as the U.S. is trying to slam through $95 billion to continue to fund, I mean, outside of the genocide Israel's perpetrating, think about where else that money's going to. You've got money going to the continued proxy war in Ukraine, where even the New York Times has admitted that ground has not changed, essentially. Almost nothing has changed in the proxy war in Ukraine over the past year. Like the entirety of 2023, you had a mere inches on a map, centimeters on a map actually change hands. So essentially, you got a stalemate of killing. They just keep killing each other and they're stuck. And it's right there. And it needs to end at a peace table. But the U.S. And Zelensky won't let that happen. But yet the U.S. here with this $95 billion is trying to send more to the purely lunacy in Ukraine, which also puts us on the brink of nuclear war because, you want to be on the brink of nuclear war. It keeps you alive, right? Keeps you excited. Could you imagine if we weren't on the brink of nuclear war? What would we do with ourselves all day, right? What would you do? But so you got that genocide and sending quote unquote aid to Taiwan. And of course, I hope most of you know this. The whole reason that the U.S. pretends to give a shit about Taiwan is because the U.S. is trying to do to China the same thing they've done with Russia and Ukraine. You try and peel off a piece. Now, I realize Ukraine is not a piece of Russia, but it was a piece of the Soviet bloc. You try and peel off a piece of the country, and you try and peel off more and more pieces, and you also get them to spend a lot of their money and effort to try and fight a battle on their own home turf, essentially, so that you can drain them while the U.S. hegemony maintains its power. That's the goal, basically. And so we're trying to do it with Taiwan, even though, according to our agreements with China that we continue to be a part of, the U.S. says Taiwan is part of China. China says Taiwan is part of China. So, and in fact, if you look up the number of countries that say Taiwan's not part of China, it's either 12 or 20. I can't remember the exact number, but I'm certain it's either 12 countries. I think it's 12 say Taiwan's not part of China, and several of them are countries I've never heard. Like literally, if you look at the list, I guarantee you there's at least 2 on there that you go, that's not a country. Come on. Anyway. Let's continue about Israel for a minute. I don't think you'll be getting this from the mainstream media. Israeli soldiers have just stolen over $54 million from a Gaza bank. And let's be clear, this is not counting all of the millions and millions they've stolen from other areas of Gaza. This is not counting everything else they're stealing from Gaza. This is not counting all the stuff that's laying in the rubble in Gaza that Israel will eventually steal. This is just specifically this one bank in Gaza. And so I want to be clear that 54 million is a tiny drop of what they are stealing from Gaza, not to mention the entire land. I mean, that's really the goal, right? This is ethnic cleansing. The goal is to steal all of it. But $54 million stolen, and I assume this is printed cash, stolen from a Gaza bank. This is admitted. The IDF has admitted they have stolen $54 million during this special genocide operation from a bank in Gaza. The article says Israeli soldiers seized 200 million shekels from the Bank of Palestine headquarters in Gaza City. 200 million shekels is equivalent to $54 million, according to an Israeli newspaper. But they also quote Israeli officers. So it's not just the newspaper, it's also the IDF. Citing Israeli officers said a military force took the funds allocated for the Ramallah-based Palestinian Authority. And here is the Israeli military spokesperson said, quote, Israeli soldiers were at the Bank of Palestine headquarters in Gaza last week to prevent money from reaching Hamas. What a lovely alibi. What a lovely euphemism for stealing millions of dollars from a people you are currently genociding. We were just stopping it from getting to the bad guys is what we were doing. And because I can't do an Israeli accent, I'm going to do a Southern accent like this is the U.S. military, which it kind of is. But we went in there, and what we did is we made sure the money didn't get to the bad guys, and we sent that money to my bank account. We handed it out to our folks so that the bad guys don't get it, is what we did. Could you imagine if let's go back to another well-known genocide of my people, the Jews, during the Holocaust. Let's go back to that. Could you imagine, and I'm sure they did say this probably, I mean, this is probably out of a Nazi playbook also, but could you imagine if the Nazis said, as they were stealing money from all the Jewish people, from the banks, obviously they stole all the jewelry, they stole everything, right? From the Jews they were genociding. They were ethnically cleansing in what was a horror show and what is now a horror show. They stole everything. But could you imagine, how would you feel? How would you view it as the Nazis said, we need to take the money and the jewelry so that it doesn't go to harming Nazis? Would you be like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's perfect. Good idea. That's great. Now, granted, I realize I'm creating a hypothetical. I'm sure the Nazis did say things like that. I can't imagine they did not. And yet again, and I don't think a lot of it, I don't think it's intentional. Here you have Israel behaving in the same way the Nazis behaved and giving many of the same explanations the Nazis gave, which is, again, this world. I titled this episode, we're at a fork between two possible worlds. Possible worlds are unfolding right now. One is the one in which we stand up against this genocide, and no matter who it's being perpetrated by, no matter who it's being perpetrated against, we as a world are able to come together and say, this is what genocide looks like, and we won't be okay with it. We won't stand by and watch it happen. We are not going to allow this. So that is one world. And it seems to me, in many ways, we're headed towards that world, which would be wonderful, okay? If you look at the ICJ decision, if you look at the fact that 80% of this world, the population is in countries that are not endorsing Israel's genocide, it's probably over 80%. If you look at the massive protests around the world that are happening against this genocide, it seems like we're headed towards the better world, okay? But there's obviously a fight going on right now, and it could easily get pulled one side or the other. And the side that the U.S. and Israel and the Canadian government, and obviously I'm talking governments, and the British government and the German government, the side that they are right now, the world they're pulling for is a world where genocide can be perpetrated, and we stand back and go, well, those are our allies, so it's fine. Those people were wronged in the past, so it's okay. Or the people that are genociding don't have as much money and influence, so it's fine. Or they're not allied with us in war, or they don't sell us oil. They don't have a lot of things to sell us, so it's fine. This world, the other option is a world where genocide becomes allowable under a lot of circumstances. That is the world that Israel is trying to get you and me and all of us to think is the future we want to live in. And that is a horrifying future. Absolutely horrifying future. And I think I'll jump to, let's see, where is it? Because I have referenced it, referencing the Holocaust and everything. Let's jump to this clip from, oh, by the way, everybody, click thumbs up. I was going to say a clip of this Holocaust survivor. But before we get to that, please click thumbs up. Please click share. In about 10 or 20 minutes, we will be going to justrumble.com/leaguecamp. Anybody who does a super chat over like $3, I'll address it on the show. I might not be able to address it immediately, but I will address it. Thank you for supporting the show. This, as you can see, I'm not heavily funded. I'm not funded by some horrible corporate entities and things like that. And that is why I turn to you guys to keep this show going. It is, I'm heavily suppressed, heavily censored. I give you 4 to 5, actually over 5. It's probably closer to 6, honestly, 5 to 6 hours of free content every week. And it comes down to whether you guys see it as worthwhile to keep it going. Another way to support the show is become a member by clicking the red Join Lee tab on Rumble or going to leecamp.net. Okay, so here is, let's see, what's his name? Oh, wow, I guess he died. I don't know when he died, but he's talking about Israel in this clip. I hesitate to pronounce his name wrong. It could be Hayo or it could be Hajo. Meyer. Anyway, last name Meyer. But so he starts off, for those of you listening to the podcast who don't see this, he starts off by showing his tattoo from the Holocaust, from surviving the Holocaust. This is a man who still has as many do, still has the numbers that were tattooed on him during the Holocaust. And he starts out by showing that.
I saw in Auschwitz that if a dominant group wants to dehumanize others, so as
don't know if you heard that. He said, I saw in Auschwitz that the dominant group wants to dominate the others.
The Nazis wanted to dehumanize me. These dominant group must first be dehumanized in a way themselves by diminishing their empathy due to propaganda and indoctrination in order to be able to be as cruel as some were. Okay, but the same holds nowadays for Israel. I am appalled about how hateful, how dehuman.
I'm going to keep playing in a second, but I love that point he made, that it really does, sitting by and watching this or celebrating it or trying to justify it, as so many celebrities have, Bill Maher and Michael Rappaport and John Lovitz and all these maniacs, as they try and justify this. But sitting by and allowing it, sitting by and accepting it, celebrating it, all of those things, it really does dehumanize you to just a powerful level, to no longer see the humanity in others it dehumanizes you. I mean, it's kind of ironic. It'd be funny if it wasn't, if this weren't the topic, that as these people, as Israelis, at least the ones who support this, and again, I'm not acting like every Israeli supports this. There are those who don't, although the percentages are very, very high. But as they support this, as they endorse this, as they celebrate this, they have actually relinquished part of their soul, part of who they are as a human. And so, ironically, as they dehumanize Palestinians, calling them animals, calling them insects, so many other things, so many other horrific things, as they dehumanize Palestinians, they dehumanize themselves. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's again, horrifying. But so let's continue with what he was saying.
I am appalled about how hateful, how dehumanized, that they do not see any human aspect in any Palestinian anymore. It's terrible. The Zionists have not any right whatsoever to use the Holocaust for any purpose. They have given up everything which has to do with humanity, with empathy, for one thing, the state, the blood and soil, just like the Nazis.
So, great points being made. They have no right. He says they have no right to use the Holocaust, to reference the Holocaust. They have no right to use that to justify their treatment of Palestinians. Having been a victim of Holocaust, having your family members be victims of Holocaust. It was my grandmother's second husband. He's not with us anymore, but so I guess it's my step grandfather would be the term. He lost essentially his entire family in the Holocaust. He came here at age 18, came to the United States at age 18, didn't speak any language, only spoke German, and showed up without his family at 18, and entire family gone. But using that just because your family was a victim of that, or because you were a victim of it. In this case, this is a survivor who was there. Doesn't make it okay to then genocide others. It doesn't make it okay to then perpetrate that against others. In fact, it should be, as Mr. Meyer here is clearly saying, it should be the exact opposite, where you saw the horrors of it, and so you should fight to stop those horrors from being perpetrated against anyone ever again. Doesn't matter if you want the goddamn land or not. Doesn't matter if you want to steal their house or not. I mean, you shouldn't want that either. But using the Holocaust to justify a Holocaust is ridiculous and illogical, to say the least. Even if you take the morality out of it, it is completely illogical to use a Holocaust to justify a Holocaust. Anyway, I thought he made some brilliant points. In a moment, I didn't even tell you what I'm going to get to in the rest of this hour. I should have hyped it, man. My hype game is really poor. I need a couple of people just behind me who just pop up every once in a while and go, yeah, yeah, some hype people. And they also remind me, don't forget to tell them you're going to cover. Anyway, coming up in a moment, I'm going to show the clip of Joe Biden just being eviscerated by the King of Jordan to his face, like to his face. Not that Joe Biden knows where he is or who he's talking to or who's talking in front of him. So it's not as hurtful. It would be more hurtful if he knew who was speaking or what they were saying. But anyway, I'm going to show that clip. I also, later in this hour, am going to destroy, right? You got to say that for the clickbait. I am going to obliterate. I'm going to rip into many tiny pieces Mark Maron and John Oliver, two liberal comedians who I have known in the past. I would even say I was friendly with John Oliver, but I am going to, and I'm going to tell you, there are things that I like of theirs, so I'm not going to eviscerate everything they do, but I'm going to explain why I'm destroying them, and that's coming up in basically for being liberals. But we're going to do that in a few minutes, so that's coming up soon. So hang in there and click the thumbs up button. But update on UNWA. If you guys watch my live streams, like I come to you 4 days a week. If you watch my live streams, I've been talking about this Palestinian aid organization is connected to the UN, and I'm not going to go through all the details, but Israel's trying to crush UNWA, but they've been trying to crush them for years. They hate that UNWA exists because it is a massive Palestinian aid organization group. UN connected, but their budget is over $1 billion a year. This is 30,000 employees, over 700 schools for Palestinians, over 9.2 million hospital visits every year, medical visits every year for Palestinians. Massive aid organization. And Israel has succeeded through lies at getting the U.S. and many others to defund or do their best to defund this organization. And here is the latest update. Israel has now shut down all UNWA offices in Israel. And here's a key point, which I have not said in earlier live streams. So Israel wanted to destroy UNWA for years. The initials are UNRWA for years because, and this is a quote, because UNWA formalizes the idea that there are Palestinian refugees and that they have a right to return, to go back to their homes they were driven out of. And how does it formalize that idea? Well, Israel doesn't really want to acknowledge that these are refugees, right? If you say refugees, then you've got, it's a term that means something, and it means they have been kicked out or they fear for their lives, their home, the place they used to live, right? That's what a refugee is. A refugee is not just someone who's wandering around, it's someone who's been kicked out or fears for their life in the place they were. So by acknowledging that all the Palestinians, millions and millions of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank and many other refugee areas in other countries, by acknowledging that they are refugees, you are acknowledging they've been kicked out of their homes, which Israel does not want to acknowledge, right? Israel doesn't want you to really think about the reality of what Israel is, which is a country that kicked people out of their homes, millions of people out of their homes, and continues to, right? The settlers continue to move in and just bulldoze Palestinian homes. So it's not even done. This is current kicking out of Palestinians. So by acknowledging with such a large aid agency that these are refugees, then you are acknowledging that refugees have a right to return. And I mean, refugees do have a right to return. Most don't get to because they fear for their lives or something. But it acknowledges what is the reality of Israel, which is an apartheid colonial state, a colonial settler apartheid project. And so just the existence of UNWA, not just that it helps Palestinians live and survive and thrive to what level they can in an open air prison, not just those things it hates, but also the fact that it acknowledges these are refugees. And where are they refugees from? I wonder where the refugees from. Oh, the place they used to be, their homes that Israel kicked them out of. Okay, let's get to the clip of the King of Jordan, This is just yesterday or the day before. King of Jordan speaking in front of Joe Biden. And by the way, Joe Biden also, I'll start with this. Joe Biden, I don't think I have this clip up, but Joe Biden accidentally, during this joint press conference with the King of Jordan, accidentally called the Israelis' activities in Rafah genocide, but he called it an American military operation, a U.S. military operation in Rafah in Gaza. He accidentally and then corrected himself because, those are the type of things he says. Now, it is an American military operation. The U.S. military is flying drones over Gaza to give intelligence to Israel, along with everything I said earlier. But anyway, and I know many of you are correctly pointing out that the King of Jordan is no wonderful human being. He is largely a puppet, and many people have, I'm going to say not nice things to say about him. So I am not highlighting that this guy is awesome, but saying these things that he said in front of Joe Biden was pretty amazing, rather than just, going along with the U.S. talking points.
Region and the world. Unfortunately, one of the most devastating wars in recent history continues to unfold in Gaza as we speak. Nearly 100,000 people have been killed, injured, or are missing.
And by the way, for those of you listening to the podcast, Joe Biden is standing in the background and has a look on his face like he can't understand why he's still alive. He looks horrified that he's still alive.
The majority are women and children. We cannot afford an Israeli attack on Rafah. It is certain to produce another humanitarian catastrophe.
Now, I'll keep playing a second, but even though Biden and the U.S. continue to facilitate, right now we're trying to send more bombs to Israel and everything else, so we continue to facilitate this genocide. Joe Biden and the White House publicly have started saying, we're really upset with Netanyahu and we want him to care about civilians. And they've started giving all these kind of bullshit statements about how they care about civilians and things. But even so, they are not using the terminology that the King of Jordan uses right here, talking about this Israeli attack is horrific. It's killed 100,000, killed, wounded, or missing 100,000 people. So these terms that Joe Biden is standing next to are not what the U.S. government has agreed to.
The situation is already unbearable for over 1 million people who have been pushed into Rafah since the war started. We cannot stand by and let this continue. We need a lasting ceasefire now. This war must end. We must urgently and immediately work to ensure the sustainable delivery of sufficient aid to Gaza through all possible entry points and mechanisms. And I thank you, Mr. President, for your support on this. Restrictions on vital relief aid.
So he does talk about vital relief and aid and stuff, which, yes, of course, they need aid. But the idea that you just call for aid, he's not just calling for, but the U.S., as many Congress people and stuff have been doing this, saying, we should get them aid. Yeah, you want to give them aid while they're being genocided? How about calling for an end to the genocide? How about that? Could you imagine if during the Holocaust, the official stance of, people in the U.S., and by the way, the U.S. did stand by and watch it and didn't bomb the train tracks and things like that. So anyway, but could you imagine if the official stance was, we need to get the people in the concentration camps a little, like a care package, get them, can we just like meals ready to eat? If you could just throw a jar of peanut butter into the concentration camps, then that would be fine. It's just so laughable. The idea of during a genocide, we just need to get them some aid. We need to get them a little bit of food so they can be okay. Yes, they desperately need food and clean water and medicine. They also need to stop being bombed. That is step one. Step one is stop the genocide. Also get them food. I'm not saying don't get them food, but with any of these idiots in Congress or your other politicians, statewide, whoever that gets asked this question, they go, we need to get them more aid. No, you need to stop the genocide and also get them aid. That should be the sentence, okay?
Aid and medical items are leading to inhumane conditions. No other UN agency can do what UNRWA is doing in helping the people of Gaza through this humanitarian catastrophe.
So this, as I just brought you, this is the absolute opposite of the U.S. stance. The U.S. has just cut their funding to UNRWA, as have, I believe, Canada, the U.K., many others. So the U.S. stance is not UNRWA should be fully funded and helping the Palestinian people. That is not the U.S. stance. The U.S. stance is cut the funding and let the people die. And yet, here's the King of Jordan in front of Joe Biden, where Joe Biden clearly doesn't know what's being said or where he is. And he's never looked more like Mr. Burns either. Saying the opposite, that UNRWA needs to be fully funded and needs to be helping these people immediately.
Work in other areas of operation, especially in Jordan, where 2.3 million are registered, is also vital. It is imperative that UNRWA continues to receive the support it needs to carry out its mandate. The potential threat of Palestinian displacement beyond the borders of Gaza and the West Bank is something we view with extreme concern and cannot be allowed. At the same time, we must not ignore the situation in the West Bank and in the holy sites in Jerusalem. Nearly 400 Palestinians have been killed in the West Bank since October 7th, including almost 100 children and over 4,000 injured.
Let me see. I want to jump just a few seconds here.
And threats. It is also important to stress that the separation of the West Bank and Gaza cannot be accepted. 7 decades of occupation, death, and destruction have proven beyond any doubt that there can be no peace.
Okay, that line, to me, the funding of UNRWA and that line are the biggest notes of this thing. 7 decades of occupation, death, and destruction. The U.S. would never say there's been 7 decades of occupation, death, and destruction by Israel. And the fact that Joe Biden is standing next to a guy saying that is amazing. And I don't know that we've ever seen a U.S. head of state standing next to and not smiling, because I don't know that his facial muscles like function in that way anymore, but standing next to someone's calling what Israel is 7 decades of occupation, death, and destruction. That is pretty amazing. And to me, that's the headline. Many people are highlighting this clip, but the headline is that Joe Biden stood next to and in certain ways gave his approval. Because if you're standing next to these statements and you don't shake your head no, then you're basically acknowledging it's the truth. But I don't know that Joe Biden knew anything was being said. I don't know if he knew where he is. I mean, like I said, I think he's just upset he's not passed on to another realm by now. He seems very unhappy to be alive. Anyway, 7 decades of occupation, death, and destruction is what the King of Jordan just called Israel in the face of Joe Biden. So that is, to me, very powerful. It also shows how much of the world, again, I know this guy's a puppet in so many other ways, but it shows how much of the world is standing up. The world is not bowing down to U.S. hegemony like it did just a few years ago. And that is a very good thing for the world, because the U.S. has caused nothing but death and destruction with every action around the world that we perpetrate. We just make sure that people can't have peace, people can't have equality, people can't have sustainability, just on every level. Okay, let me get to one more story, and then I'm going to decimate, rip limb from limb, Mark Maron and John Oliver. A little bit, some of what they're talking about on Israel, some of other things. That's what I'm going to be destroying in a second. But all of this is at, as well as one other story, all of this is at rumble.com/Lee Camp. Join me over there, rumble.com/Lee Camp. It is free to watch. Also on my locals page, you can watch there. It will continue there. Rumble.com/Lee Camp. Join me over there. If you're not going to join over there, I hope you will at least, sign up for my email list, which you can do at leecamp.com, a free email list. And you often won't get notifications about my videos, even if you click the bell icon. So just show up Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. And let's continue at Rumble and locals. Just give me 1 second here. And if you are new to Rumble,